Buenas, pwede ti man fudgunam zugi itsan italuani. Da si Steve no dumantisa at sulimagi on your jacket. I think I'm being too nice to you guys because you're not feeling any heat and you're complaining that it's too cold, so maybe I should grow you a little bit more. Thank you very much. We will reconvene this discussion of the request by the administration as presented in Bill 426-31, which is the FY 2013 Executive Branch Governor's budget request for the provision of the financial resources necessary for the departments and agencies to deliver the services to the general public. We want to once again thank my colleagues who are back with us this afternoon. Senator Eileen Yamashita and Senator Sam Mabini was just here earlier. No, she just stepped out. She'll be back. And I'm sure the other members of the body are monitoring this. As always, even if you don't see the other senators here, I want to assure the panel here and the general public that the record of this hearing will be provided to all members of the legislature so that all of your responses to the questions that we have will be available to the senators so that they can participate in an informed deliberative process when the budget bill reaches the legislative floor. So rest assured that the committee will make that available to them. And we want to thank you for your presence and your participation this afternoon. We'll go ahead then and pick up where we had left off. And we had left off on the miscellaneous appropriation in the presentation prepared by the Bureau of Budget and Management. And we'll recognize once again Mr. Rios, who will begin with and pick up from that discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you want me to just go ahead and go through each line item and then if you have any questions?
Yes.
Okay, so on the first section there for the miscellaneous appropriation, we see no change on the request for the UOG scholarship program.
Mm-hmm. John, let me ask you this. We're receiving some information. Well, I guess you won't track this, though. So, so the question then maybe I'll just ask very simply is, have these appropriations, most especially the ones that are affecting the students, you know, during their semester for their scholarships, their stipends, and so forth, have these funds been released to the University of Guam?
With the except of
just
a 15% reserve.
So you did put a reserve on these?
That's correct, and expected to the next 3 months sit down with the university.
But I guess because over the course of the fiscal year, we received, some of us have received some inquiries from students where they, you know, these are for the students. They pay their tuition, they buy their books, their living expenses. So they have to get them on time, otherwise it presents a hardship and a burden on the students who are trying to further their education. So could you look at that discussion? I mean, this is kind of separate from operating funds, which the University of Guam may be able to defer, you know, stretch out a payment a little bit here. But when we stretch it out for the students who need it, it really creates a hardship. So, and some of the students have brought to our attention, for example, where their stipends are late or the scholarship payments are late, which even precludes them from registering because that's what they use to pay their tuition. So can you take a look at this and make sure that, you know, with school opening up next month, you know, that maybe from internal decision there or discussion with the governor, you know, as we place education. I mean, I'd certainly agree with the governor. Education is the key to our fight against poverty. And we have, you know, our young adults who are struggling at the University of Guam to pay for their education and depend on these, that maybe this portion of the appropriation to the University of Guam, which is a pass-through, it's really not an operational thing, it's a pass-through thing, for the students, that perhaps we shouldn't subject this to the 15% or release it early, because classes are going to start soon, and some of these students are not going to be able to register if they don't pay for the tuition on time, and so forth. So I'm requesting on behalf of our students at the University of Guam that are receiving the aid, for you to take a look at that and maybe get back to us if you're able to facilitate, the release of these funds. I'm not, of course, I'm saying that you should release the 15% because I think the revenues are showing we can support it. But, I understand also that's a prerogative of the administration. But in this area where it really is not for operational, but it is for the students, that you look at that.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and set up a meeting to meet with the President Underwood and Mr. O'Brien
Okay.
and discuss this in detail. We haven't received any requests for this, not that I know of,
Okay.
but I will sit down with them.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. But not the 15%. Yeah. Yeah. We just haven't released them. Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're in almost every instance, we're keeping the same appropriation level for these miscellaneous appropriations.
Yes, status quo, but yes, and also, Senator, or Mr. Chair, we did receive a letter, according to Mr. Guerrero here, going to request for the release of the 15%. So that's something that we'll be considering and sitting down with them
With the
on.
union?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And the increase in the Cancer Trust Fund is, of course, driven by the projected increase in the gross receipts tax, correct? It's formula driven?
Gross receipt?
I mean, I'm sorry, the Healthy Futures Fund,
Yes.
the tobacco tax and such. Okay. So we'll be able to have additional money there for the Guam Cancer Trust Fund at the University of Guam. Of the collection? Right. Yeah. Okay. The apprenticeship program, that is the GCC apprenticeship program. It's the same appropriation as last year. I just want to make sure because isn't the apprenticeship, this is over and above the Manpower Development Fund that they get, correct? Am I? Or is this that percentage of 80% of the Manpower Development Fund, of the alien registration fee?
I believe this is the Manpower Development Fund, and I believe the forecast was decreased.
Yeah, I know. I see it's decreased, but the amount is the same as last year.
Okay.
Oh. So the reduction, so that's where you just, okay.
Yeah, the reduction in the Manpower Development Fund basically was taken out of the Department of Labor, and the appropriation for the
GCC.
apprentice and GCC was remained the same.
Was remained.
Status
But
quo.
doesn't the statute set a percent,
Yeah, percentage-wise.
right?
Yeah.
So we're giving GCC more than what the percentage would be, correct? I think it's 80-20.
Senator, I think the projected amount,
Mhm.
this amount that's showing on the apprentice is 80% of our projected amount.
Okay.
But it also showed a corresponding reduction overall,
Right.
and that reduction was actually put into, or was taken out of laborers. But it's still 20% going to labor of the total projected revenues.
Projected revenues.
Yes.
We're at the GCC apprenticeship program. Okay. All right, so it won't cause any kind of reduction there in support of the students at the GCC and the program there. Okay. The Interscholastic Sports Fund. Mr. Reyes, continue.
No changes on the Interscholastic Sports Fund, the sports busing services,
Mhm.
the health and physical education activities, the Chamorro Studies Division,
Okay.
Department of
That's also
Education.
separated out again. Good.
the utility costs for the promissory note for Department of Education had been reduced, and that was based on the change on the promissory note. We received those figures from Department of Education,
Okay.
okay?
But it's coming out of, oh, we changed the funding source as well?
Yes, that's correct. This is a special fund. Is that TIA?
The Territorial Educational Facilities Fund?
Yes.
Okay.
The next is the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
That's still there, the 2 million for the general fund. There's been no change. The,
Was there any, I guess, was there any discussion with DOE with regards to the fact that they're not going to get the 2 million this year, and what would they need next year?
yeah, for the 2012, we released the 85% of the 2 million,
Okay.
you know, based on the,
They're saying that they didn't get it,
Yeah,
so.
they didn't
I
get the
mean,
cash
That's
from
correct.
Yeah,
DOA.
I mean, 80%, gosh, I mean, that's, of course, that's
Yeah,
a
they're
substantial
probably-
amount, but.
We've actually released it already, and I confirmed that with the analysts during lunchtime.
When was it released?
I believe the release was actually done in the beginning of the fiscal year, but we've maintained the 15% of that appropriation. Now, whether or not they actually spend it for and purchase the books, that we don't know.
Okay. Because DOE's
Yeah, but
testimony
DOE,
at
you're
the
right,
hearing was,
Monday,
you know, because we were kind of also discussing what their lapse would be, and they identified that, yeah, they would lapse that 2 million because it hasn't been released to them, so
Mhm.
we need to kind of verify that once again.
so their 15% would have amounted to 30 million, and for the pay periods between, you know, now and the end of the fiscal year, they would need 26 million, and the remaining 4, then, we're thinking that 2 of that will be for the textbooks and whatever other obligations they have.
I can verify one more time that prior to us coming here this afternoon, we've actually verified with the analysts that appropriation for the textbooks was actually
And so my question then would be is that when you release, of course, you know, a certain, the allotment, and was there clarification that 80% of that 2 million was specifically for textbooks, and they didn't just use it for all of their operations, not knowing, because you may have listed it as textbooks, but by the time it got to them, it wasn't posted as such.
Yeah, I don't know, the mic's not working, but we did actually release it, Senator, whether or not we've actually
Put in a request.
putting a request to actually purchase the textbooks.
Yeah, well, we know they didn't.
They
So,
didn't?
they did not.
They did not
Because
put in the request.
I guess according to them, it wasn't released, so, yeah, so,
Okay,
John?
did they provide you a budget to actual?
Yes?
They did?
Their budget, in terms of their releases?
No, not in terms of what the, what their budget is and how much they receive. They provided that to you?
Here.
No, but it's very hard for me to qualify these numbers because it's very difficult for DOE to do the tracking. And so,
Well, we know, I know from, for example, from the Educational Finance Supervisory Commission that, that the identification of lapses for DOE after they went through the DOE transactions, that when they identified what would lapse, the textbook appropriation was, they're saying that they may lapse something like $4 million or 4 to 4.6 or 4.8 million dollars at the end of the fiscal year. 2 million of that is the textbooks, and the other 2 million, 2.3 million it would be the increments. So that was the last report I saw from the Educational Finance Supervisory Commission. So that's why I'm also thinking that that textbook may not have been released, or else
So
I
they
should
don't
say,
need this 2 million then, right? For
What's
fiscal
that?
year 2013, since they're holding the.
no, then they'll need 4.
No, they need more.
So, we'll verify that, but,
Yeah.
you know, I understand that Steve said that he had verified that. And it could be that the appropriation was released, but the cash was needed to pay for payroll. And so instead of that, they booked that release into payroll versus charged it against the appropriation.
and I believe that's very true because in most cases when they ask for the cash drawdown, it's always payroll.
Always payroll,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then on. The next is the high-risk status federal grants, and that had no change.
Wait,
Oh,
before,
I'm
before
sorry.
that,
I'm
is
sorry, we
materials
moved that.
from 2014.
Okay.
So, and less out textbook appropriation.
Right.
What, can you explain what that is for 2014? Because you have
Yeah, John?
1.5 million? So you're, because this, he writes advance appropriation, but then you're using 1.5 when normally what we give is 2 million for the textbooks. You're reducing it now to 1.5?
The reason why I believe it's the credit you see there is because it's coming from the 2014.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't get counted twice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2013 appropriation was an advance appropriation from 2014.
But
There is a
you're,
reduction of $500,000.
you're right,
Yes.
$500,000.
Right, so we're reducing that. Again, it's just, is that wasn't developed, I guess, with DOE. They're not saying we're gonna order 1.5 or $500,000 less in books. It's just a function of the reduction. Okay. It's not that they told you they only needed 1.5. Okay. All right.
Just to verify too, Senator,
Hmm.
the release of 1.7 million for the textbook was done in October 2005.
Okay.
If you look into the system right now, the AS400, there is an available balance of 1.7.
1.7.
So we did impose the 15%, just the 300,000, and we released the 1.7 in October last year.
Okay.
But you know, in this particular case, though, with textbooks, when we order them, we can't say we're gonna order all these textbooks, you're gonna ship them to us, but, you know, we have 15% less to pay you right now. They won't ship until, you know, we pay for this in advance, so we need to, we'll follow up, because I had somebody check with the staff, and they said they haven't received it. And the only thing we can, you know, of course, assume is that maybe they booked it for, you know, payroll, then that's why they're looking at this as part of their additional, lapse, so that they'll be able to purchase the textbooks.
So we need to reconcile that. Okay. So John, again, the high-risk status funding, are we assuming that?
Reduction of,
That we're, by reducing that, we're saying that DOE will now have to just absorb that cost into their operational budget? Was that discussion relate to, or that relate to them and so forth?
is that correct?
So that wasn't relate to them? They're not aware of that?
Yeah. Yes, Senator, we just didn't carry it forward, and whether it was related to them or not, I need to verify.
Okay.
We haven't met with them, we haven't seen their budget request, so I'm not sure if it's included in the $290 million request.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it's in the 290.
Oh, it is?
It's this plus 18.
So you've
it's-
seen the budget, I have it, right?
It's this plus 18 FTEs. Yes, sure.
Speaker Ben, I don't understand how come you haven't seen the budget. If you're in charge of Bureau of Budget and Management,
I think,
I don't understand why,
They didn't transmit it to you?
I don't understand that at all.
I know they're not required by law. They
yeah,
transmit
they
it directly to us.
transferred to the
But-
legislature.
But still,
They didn't-
you have the responsibility and.
No, none of the documents are processed through the Bureau. But if you'd like, you can change it and have us control their budget.
You're already controlling it.
You are.
You're
Well, just
controlling
on the
their
15% reserve, that's it.
No,
But I mean, the travel, the GG ones, and,
You're not approving travel.
well, I haven't seen any of the documentation,
Federal travel
so,
haven't approved.
not for DOE, we haven't.
Yes, you have someone up there approving. Yes.
If you're talking about the Bureau, we don't see.
We don't see any of their,
DOE travel. If somebody else is doing it around the vicinity.
Around the vicinity. And what vicinity is that?
Yeah. Who's the one, you're right, we need to know who's the one who rejects then these federal travels for DOE. If it's not,
there's a federal.
Doesn't come to
federal
you?
department? DOE?
It's not
Federal?
DOE.
yes, DOE.
No,
The-
but it doesn't come to the Bureau, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not required to be submitted to the Bureau for clearance.
Yes. But we know that they're being cleared through Adelup, so which one of your neighbors is doing extra work?
We have enough work, Senator.
Okay. But we do know it. Okay.
Okay. Okay, and to continue, that is the same with the power utilities.
No, you skipped FQ.
I'm sorry, which one?
I
The
think you're
equipment?
conveniently skipping some
Equipment
of
for
these.
specific schools? There's nothing there. FQ Sanchez, working capital?
That's from the tobacco bond, so,
Yeah,
so have you
that's,
put that back to the tobacco bond?
there was no request.
What
We're
did
just
you do?
carrying over the same, there was nothing in fiscal year 2012 on that. Is that correct?
I think that was the balance that was appropriate.
Yes, so you have not dispersed this at all then?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't show anything on 12.
Yeah, you're not showing
Yes,
any,
we're not carrying it forward.
We're not carrying it forward.
But it was an appropriation in
yes.
2012.
Mhm.
It's using a balance, I think, on the tobacco.
Mhm.
So,
So it's back in the tobacco fund.
Was it expended this year?
oh, it wasn't
Yeah.
expended. Yeah.
That's why I want to know whether was it expended or was
Yeah.
it back too?
Did you release an allotment for that?
I would need to check.
Okay, I
Yeah.
guess that's the question, because that would be your purview, is the release of the allotment for the expenditure.
Okay, and then for the power utilities,
Mhm.
that wasn't also carried over?
So, once again, that additional cost is going to have to be absorbed in the DOE budget? Is that your intention, I guess?
Well,
That if it has to be paid, it'll have to
under the,
be paid from their current operating,
Wow, that's a lot. Think you need
that's
to add
correct,
that.
right?
Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct, Senator.
Do you by any chance have an accounting of all of these charges now that you're sending back to DOE to now cover in their own budget?
I believe they have their own financial management system, right?
No,
And we
but I
don't
mean-
see any of the...
No, because this was not normally a
expenditure.
part of their budget, operations budget. But now we're seeing all these, and I'm wondering to see whether they, because they're not even aware that all these now will be borne, absorbed by their own budget. So I think it's important that, we can get, if you can get to, and I'm going to request the chairman, is if you can provide a list of the, in the object category and the dollar amount, how much is going to, you're sending back to DOE to cover.
Okay, I will verify whether they've included it in their $291 million budget.
We would have to look
The
at their
deal.
schedule of
Okay.
payment because this
Yeah.
might be already being paid off. That's the whole thing.
But this is a debt service?
Yeah.
The debt service?
Yeah. I think you have to look at the schedule of payments where you started. One of the reasons, just go. Senator?
yes.
Ben, usually we don't include it in this, in the process, is because we've already looked at the schedule of payments and we're seeing that this may have been paid already.
Mhm.
Usually, we usually try to maintain our miscellaneous in a regular fashion, consistently year in and year out, but if our analyst says that it's not needed because it's already been scheduled for payment or paid off, then we wouldn't include it.
Mhm.
So what we have to do, or what I have to do, is review the payment schedules for these debt service.
Okay.
That I don't have with me right now, but when I look at the questions you're asking and the amounts not being there, then first thing in mind is it's probably being paid off for at a certain date.
All right.
So
Can
I
we
would have
just-
to look, I would have to look at that schedule of payment.
Okay, can you look at that then?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. That's also the collection fund?
Yeah.
The next is the rehabilitation and detoxification and prevention services. And
This
that-
is the miscellaneous appropriation for mostly contracts, correct? These are the contractual programs that are being contracted out to NGOs. Okay.
And there's also no change on the Oasis Empowerment Center for Women.
Mhm. And then the next item is our amended permanent injunction. And this, again, we just have to, we were requesting earlier when we were discussing mental health to ensure that we're only obligated to make one single payment in this coming fiscal year, because in the last fiscal year, I think we had like 4 or 5 payments that we had to make to deposit pursuant to the permanent injunction order, right? Okay. So we just need to make sure that that's the only payment required for this fiscal year. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the next is the Guam Cancer Registry.
Mhm.
There was a slight reduction of about 14%, or 20,000.
And this was, right, Healthy Futures.
Yeah, Healthy Future Fund.
Isn't this also, Bill, a formula thing?
There's something on
1%? But didn't we estimate Hilton Futures Fund above current year's collections? Or current year's adopted revenues? What was that? Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what's the, what was the adopted revenues
Yeah.
for Healthy Futures last year?
14.2 million,
Right. And what's the adopted revenues this year?
14.2. And then it was the tracking, I believe, that you're looking at. It was tracking, and basically the projection to 16.3, and that's the,
Mm-hmm. So, I know, but it was 14.2 and 14.2, but
the
We-
tracking was a lot higher.
it's like by $100 or something, isn't it? What's the difference? The adopted revenues and then the
14.6 is the adopted.
the projected.
So it's about 4.
Yeah, see? It's,
Yeah,
It's
the
more.
Public Law 31,
Right.
the authorizes is 14.219213,
right,
and the governor's executive budget was
14.6.
14.21,
No, 14.
14.6.
14.601.
Yeah, so if you have,
601.
if it was 1% and it's 142 at 1% of 14.2, why is this being reduced? Wouldn't it be just a little up instead of down? Because now it's 14.6. So it wouldn't, unless, you know what I mean, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it should be a slight increase. Just check the calculations, I guess.
Yeah.
To 146.
We can increase it by the 4,000.
Well, it's, by the, whatever 1%
Every little bit
of,
helps.
whatever 1%, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and public health certainly are running some good programs up there with the
Okay.
cancer registry. So, okay. Continue, Mr. Rios?
The environment? The environmental health for 15 additional positions. That was removed?
But that's being increased in the appropriation for that division, correct? If the fund supports it based upon the projected revenues. But that's one of the revenues we have some concern with, correct?
That's correct.
In terms of the current tracking, and so are we kind of having a contingency plan for that at the end of this fiscal year? If the tracking doesn't support those additional positions? Mr. Rios, you
We
track-
could consider a
You're
contingency
looking at
plan.
that?
Yeah, we can consider,
Okay,
depending on when we get close to the end of the fiscal year.
right,
And we can make,
yeah, that's something that'll have to be dealt with. So, okay,
also the environment health for 15 additional, that's sanitary inspection revenue fund.
right. So, and again, that's all being folded into that larger environmental health fund now.
Right.
Okay.
The line of credit
Mhm.
for
GMHA,
GMHA, no change.
are they, do they have an outstanding line of credit? I mean, we may be appropriating debt service, but maybe they don't have any more debt. Is that possible?
Sure, they have a lot of debt.
Did you check?
Do you know of that?
We would have to check.
Yeah.
We'll
I
check.
mean, maybe they didn't exercise it. That's possible.
Mhm.
This is by public law, I believe this is codified, $1 million.
Yeah, but that's if they have a line of credit that they exercise. If they didn't exercise a line of credit and there's no payment needed, then would have to reappropriate this money to allow them to use it for, other than, if we wanted to give it to them again, you know, over, if they don't have a line of credit outstanding, then there's no debt service payment. This money is specific to payment of debt service, exercised through the line of credit. If they don't exercise it, we still may need to give them the $1 million, but then they can't use it, you know, for any other purposes except the line of credit, and we may decide to reappropriate it to medicine or other things. So can you just verify that, that indeed they have an outstanding line of credit, and maybe just get what their payment is on that?
Okay. The reprogramming for appropriation from the 2007 tobacco bond proceeds and available interest of tobacco asset-backed bonds. That also had been removed.
And we're assuming that it's been released.
For this year?
That probably should have been, because
Yeah.
it was cash outside of the general fund collections,
Yeah.
right? So
Okay.
we're assuming that that's pretty much been released and given to the hospital. And there's no more there. Okay.
The monitoring of the island beaches, GIPA,
Mhm.
100,000 stayed the same.
Okay.
The request is the same. Closure, monitoring, and opening of the landfill, 200,000.
Yeah,
stayed the
this
same.
comes out, this will continue to come out of the solid waste fund, correct?
That's correct. The maintenance of public restrooms, Parks and Rec,
Mhm.
no change, carrying over the same appropriation.
Are they
And
still,
also-
do they still have the same, or have they increased their contracts? Still the same number of restrooms have been outsourced? Okay.
And also the maintenance of the pool facilities.
Okay.
The training for accountants, training and development, DOA.
Okay.
We started that by adding, requesting for 30,000.
All right. You have my support?
The the supplemental annuity benefits,
Okay.
Department of Administration, that's no change.
And that's based on what was released, basically?
From the previous, or from this year's appropriation.
Yeah. So we're assuming that's the reconciled number in terms of, from
Yeah.
retirement?
Yeah. Well, and it's a moving target, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
Sure. Okay.
The cost of living allowance, also no change.
All right.
Support of child in custody,
Okay.
no change. Interest only for retirement, Department of Education, and GMH.
Shouldn't that be out?
Yeah.
Don't worry, I got a use for it.
For the bond, just tell them.
We've paid that debt off. Oh, we've restructured that
We
debt.
restructured that debt.
We
that's
haven't paid
correct.
it off, we just restructured that debt.
So we just
Yeah.
use that for part of the debt service then.
There's a surplus in the debt service.
Okay. Then the pay GPA for installation, operation of public street lights. And that one there had the request was a increase of about 1.3 million.
You know, John, I understand that, but, I mean, GPA is changing out the streetlights. They got all these federal grants. They're changing out the streetlights to be lower wattage, you know, whereas before, and yet we're increasing this, and I don't think we're increasing the number of streetlights. So how is, I think, you know, the administration should consider going back to GPA and saying, look, you got millions of dollars in energy efficiency grants. You use some of it for the street lights, yet you're still charging me the same amount for the street light when it should be consuming less power, or else the hardware portion of that have paid off over all these years, and it should now just be the consumption, you know? Because they don't replace the street light hardware, you know, every 5 years. So that should be amortized, or else it's paid out, you know, and therefore I should be paying for consumption only. But even just based on the consumption, you know, unless we're increasing the number of streetlights, that number shouldn't be increasing, unless it's for prior year obligations, unless we didn't, you know, we didn't pay the entire bill last year, and we're increasing it for that prior year, but that has to be specifically pointed out and segregated out, rather than reflecting it as a current year operational cost. So 1.2 million, that's a big increase. Or, yeah, 1.3 million, that's a big increase. And that's the number GPA gave you, and you decided to just plug it in, right?
I think the information from the streetlight came from Public Works, but
Okay.
I could also like to mention that, you know, the amount of the appropriation in 2012 currently right now is insufficient to cover the total cost of the streetlights. So this increase will represent that shortage, and hopefully, like you mentioned, because of all these upgrades in the hardware, that there would be a savings sometimes down the road.
Okay. So can you then get from Public Works of the 7.3, if that represents any prior year obligations? Or is that just the deficiency in the appropriation from last year? And that would cover, you know, the true cost, right? Okay. Did you transfer money to the streetlight funds? No?
Last fiscal year.
Are you talking about this fiscal year?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Not for this year, but
Not-
last fiscal year, I believe we
We
did.
did.
You did transfer to
Yes.
the, recall how much?
Not up.
Okay, all right.
Okay, on the health and dental life insurance for current retirees, no change.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare premiums for the retirement fund, a slight increase of about 3.3%.
Okay.
The governor, lieutenant governor's pension, there was a slight increase on that also by 4.4%.
Who got a raise? Which guy got an increase in his pension? Those are flat rates, though.
Yeah, it is a flat, I believe.
Right,
Depending if they're in the old system.
yeah. No, but the
But this
pension
one here is, yeah,
is just 50% of the salaries.
of their salary.
So it wouldn't have changed.
Yeah. Yeah, Governor Camacho, they just added into the,
I would think Lieutenant includes.
The past administration, Senator, their two pensions would also be added on to the current.
Well, their pension
appropriation
is
level.
not their pension's not just 10,000, but it's only it's a 10,000 increase. So if you added those two that weren't in last year, that would be 100,000
about
almost.
100,000.
Not at 10,000, so. I know it's not much, but can we just look at that?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, then for the annuities for the court judges and the justices, an increase of about 4.4% there, 20,000.
Okay.
For the court-appointed attorneys, the fees there, no change. The adult and juvenile drug court, no change.
Okay.
Family Visitation Center, no change.
Okay.
The street maintenance and beautification, Mayor's Council, no change.
And that's coming out of TAF, correct? Is that correct? Tourist attraction? I believe so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have-
TAF, tourist attraction fund. Okay.
The island-wide village beautification projects under the Mayor's Council, no change. Ground maintenance for schools, no change. Public safety and school education, no change. Veterinarian and animal control services, that's the 173,000 increase.
Okay. And these are
That's
the,
the transfers from agriculture.
and this includes the employee salaries? Yes? Okay. But the employees aren't there?
Isn't this going,
They'll be there in 2013.
They'll be there in 2013?
I mean, according to our budget or our plan.
Okay. All right.
That's the plan.
Yes, Senator Mabee? Yeah, sure.
So just to confirm, that budget amount covers both the vet and the control officers? Salaries and benefits. I'm just curious, how many did they bring over again? 4?
No, I think the vet stays at,
Four, right?
I think the vet stays at agriculture.
Okay.
No?
Territorial vet stays with Department of
Okay,
Agriculture.
Right.
The staff that
It's
goes
just-
over to that.
So when it says veterinarian and animal control services, it's just for the services of the veterinarian?
It's the program that's titled
Okay,
veterinary.
it's just at the program. All right, just checking. Thank you.
Okay.
What is the public safety and school education with the Mayor's Council?
That was just a recent program, just 2 years ago.
Yeah, right. That's the drug-free, their, that the Mayor's Council, I think it's the different programs that the Mayor's Council operates, the summer programs. I know, for example, the Dedido mayor runs a drug-free
Yes, that's right.
program. That- They
Summertime.
kind of handle it almost like grants out of the Mayor's Council office.
Summer only
It says,
then?
to fund public safety and social education programs that enforce alcohol regulations, reduce underage drinking,
Yeah.
support traffic safety, reduce drug-related violence and abuse, and to support Government of Guam substance abuse prevention programs,
Yeah.
and support organized sports programs in the community.
Yeah. And that goes to the Mayor's Council, and they kind of hand it out to the different mayors based upon the different mayor submittal, I think,
I
right?
believe 15,000 each.
Oh, it's a straight out allocation? Okay,
It says it in the law.
okay.
We also received a notice from DOI on reprogramming of approximately $500,000 to the Mayor's Council. I'm not sure if you
Yes.
saw that for
Saw it.
each
Right.
village. Okay, the Board of Accountancy.
The payment to federal prisons?
Oh, I'm sorry. Payment of.
Change your glasses.
Glasses, sir.
Your glasses skips a line every time.
Wanna borrow my
Can you
glasses?
go ahead and read
State the payment. The payment to Federal Bureau of Prisons for the current 2012 has a slight increase of about 19,453, or about 2.89%. It also saw a decrease in the special funds of about 2 million.
Just for the current.
Yeah, now, the amount that we're appropriating, 696,000, I think is just to pay for the current year, fiscal year 2013 payments.
the 2 million that was showing under the special fund, I think, was prior year, which we've already kind of like caught up with.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we're kind of like up to date with those payments. So
Can
that's
you-
why you see the corresponding reduction on the special fund.
Yeah, can you refresh my memory on which special fund this was appropriated out of? I don't recall offhand.
If I'm not mistaken, that should be the, not autonomous, no,
I'm trying to remember which special. Selena, you recall which special fund that, for the Federal Bureau of Prisons come out of? Last year's budget? Was it Corrections Revolving Fund? I didn't think they had that much in there.
no, the correction revolve fund only had a 915,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It came from the TEF.
TEFF.
Okay, the TEFF.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And then 676 from the general.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Okay, thank you.
The Guam Board of Accountancy, yeah, we don't handle them basically anymore.
Right.
So we didn't appropriate anything for them for 2013. So I assume they will come straight to the legislature for their requests.
Yes, they have submitted that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, the ranking structure for conservation officers, Department of Agriculture. We didn't carry that forward. That's an appropriation 2012.
Mhm.
And I think they absorbed those particular positions within their current budget.
Right, so do you know, was that money released to implement the ranking structure?
I believe so, and I'm also believe that we applied the 15%.
The,
So if not the entire 60,000, 50% less is what we'll probably
all right,
release.
so you may have applied the 15%
Yes.
reserve on this. Okay.
Okay, the emergency tax refund, DRT.
Repair,
No, repair of Telefofo indoor gymnasium, 148. Again, that was an appropriation in 2012. I assume it's a one-time appropriation. We didn't carry it over in 2013. Okay, emergency tax refund, DRT. Again, that 4.5, that was a special appropriation. That was a special appropriation made to the department.
Mhm.
We assume that it will also be absorbed in 2013 appropriation level.
Right.
Okay. I do believe, and that should include the miscellaneous categories. Is there one more? Oh, yeah, all the way down to the bottom, yeah. Tomorrowland Trust Commission, again, that's 875,000. We did not fund anything under that simply because it's together also with Department of Land Management. Okay? And that should-
Can you verify the Telefofo gym repair that the money was released?
Okay.
Can you verify that?
We
for
can
us?
check on that, sir.
Yes. Okay,
Okay, so that should include the miscellaneous appropriations.
right.
Okay. Going to the bond. Yeah, continuing appropriation debt service for the general obligation bond series 1993. Under the special funds, we have 2.808. Just a slight decrease, about 279,994,549. And this is basically what's in the abstract of what needs to be paid for 2013. That's the amount required.
Mhm.
Okay. Limited obligation bond highway refinancing, that's basically paid off. Let's see, we have
That's 6 million.
the 6 million,
So,
yes.
so last year, we we had a 6 million debt service payment.
Mhm.
This year, we don't. And so that means that 6 million went then to fund increases in the departments and agencies?
It was thrown into the pot, and how it was distributed. It was probably went for operations and the whole works.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Limited obligation, Section 30, bond, Series A, 2001. This is being actually funded out of the Section 30. That particular bond also, I think, is paid off in 2012, so we're not budgeting anything for 2013.
So we refinanced that. I don't think we paid it off.
Yeah, I believe this is paid off, Senator, because if you look in the
Oh, yeah.
categories, it says due FY 2012
Right, right.
as final year, so it is actually paid off in 2012.
Oh, yeah, this is the,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
okay.
2002 short-term financing, Section 30 funds, appropriated basically 1.281818 in 2012. What we set aside is 1.717449, an increase of about 33.9%. That again is the actual bond payment required
Okay.
for 2013. The limited obligation hotel occupancy, which is commonly known as the hot bond. In 2012, we appropriated 3.801287. What's required in 2013 jumps up to about 6.998363 for an increase of about 84.11%. Again, this is the debt service requirement for this particular bond.
This is for the tourist attraction fund.
Yes,
Right.
the fund source is the TAF.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably have the TAF hearing next week, because that means then the operational budget for TEFF must be reduced by that amount,
Corresponding amount.
because it's a flat projection. So this year they have 23 million
Mhm.
for debt service and operations, of which the debt service is only 3 million. This year they have 23 million for debt service and operations, but the debt service is double,
That's correct.
right? So
That's right.
we'll see how they handle the reduction in availability of about 3 million for operations.
And just a note, going back to the fourth debt service, the increase, the 1.7 million, that would be a payoff for 2013, so we'll have those funds available for 2014.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, the 2008 short-term financing. Again, this is basically to be paid off in 2012.
Okay.
So there was no appropriation set aside for 2013 on this bond.
So that's $3 million.
That's correct.
All right.
Okay, the general obligation bond series 2007A. Basically, yeah, the general fund we appropriate 7.874 in 2012, but for 2013 we shifted over to the special funds of about 7.874 700, and all it is just basically shifting the funding source.
And this is TEFF?
TEFF, that's correct.
This, it'll be contingent, I mean, then we really gotta collect that 30 million in real estate taxes, because we appropriated we appropriated over the entire 30 million, or we took the 23 million that we collected last year, and 7 million of that was used for debt service.
That's correct.
Last year. This year, we're taking the entire 23 and putting it out into operations of departments and agencies, or DOE and other areas,
The 7 million goes
and then
there.
the 7 million is going to have to come out of that increase of collections from the 23 to that. So what do you think would happen if we didn't collect that 7 million? What will we do? I guess this will be the first thing we pay, and then whoever is receiving an appropriation from the TEFF is going to have
Sure.
to what?
We'll get a corresponding reduction, I assume, at this point.
And that would be who?
Those agencies that are funded out of the TEFF,
And that would be who?
DOE.
DOE. So if we don't collect that 30 million, DOE is going to be short 7 million next year, or somewhere in that
We
neighborhood.
are very hopeful that we will hit the $30 million projection amount.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, the limited obligation, Section 30 bond, Series 2009A. Again, this is the, this is the landfill bond. We projected 3.6922212 in the general fund, and we also appropriated 11.980494 in the special funds for a total of about 15.6 for 2013.
Yeah, this is the first year that the principal and interest we're making payments, right? The prior years, we capitalized the interest, and
That's correct, Senator.
we've been making we've been paying that $3 million, though. I think December 2010, I think we started paying that 300,000, that 3.3 million.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And starting 2013, it actually jumps up.
It actually jumps up.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. The general obligation bond, 2009 Series A. There was a slight increase over 2012's appropriation. What we set aside for 2013 is about 21.5 million. It shows roughly about a 0.45% increase. And that is being paid out of the general fund.
Okay.
The 2010A Guam Department of Education, this is the JFK bond. Again, for 2013, there was a slight increase over 2012 of about 783,000, which represents about an 18.2% increase.
Okay, and this is something that we're going to have to kind of
Okay.
look at again because of that $1.5 million maintenance and insurance, whether it's part of this or really for TIZA. We have to make that determination.
That's correct, Senator.
And that basically concludes, I think, all the financing required for the bond debt service.
Okay. I looked at the debt abstract, and I thought that our debt service in this fiscal year was a little higher. I'll have to take a look at that again.
Yeah.
Because I thought we had a positive gain of 6 million in terms of debt service paid last year versus debt service paid this year. So I'm trying to see whether I missed something here. So, okay. Then
The last section
right,
is the amount reserved for the Legislature, Unified Judiciary, the Public Defender Service Corporation, the Mayor's Council, OPA, the AG's office, and GVB. The overall total actually reflected a slight increase of 3.3%, or about $1.8 million reduction in the general fund. There is also reduction in the special funds of about 17.3 appropriation in 2012 to 14.1 in 2013 for a variance of 3.1 or about an 18.26% decrease. The special fund side, the federal match side shows an increase in federal funds received by these agencies of about 5.1% or about 80.05% of the total federal dollars they received.
And that's mainly the Attorney General's office, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit in the judiciary?
I think the majority of this increase is represented in the Attorney General's office in the child enforcement.
Support, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
enforcement program.
Okay. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the discussion on the FY 2013 versus the FY 2012. I'd like to go ahead then and discuss and again, the detail of the difference of the current year's expenditure run rate will come sometime next week in terms of by object class, so we'll look forward to that.
I do know that there are some figures put into that template that was
Right.
provided. Did you want us to just go ahead and make those changes on that template?
Yeah,
If we felt that
Yes.
the numbers were different than our numbers?
Right, and just footnote the source of that, so that we can then look at the numbers we had, and when you footnote your source and your time frame, then we can look at ours and see and compare them. Okay? Yeah. Go. So you're free to do that. The 15% reserve and release. We wanted to take a look at those autonomous agencies or semi-autonomous agencies. The Department of Education, as we all know, and pretty much agree with, that without the release of the 15% in some form or fashion, that the department will quickly run out of money in the next couple of weeks. What or when and how much of the reserve do you plan to release?
Senator, I do not have those specifics
Okay.
for each of those autonomous agencies. I do know that, for example, the allotments are not being, the 15% is not being applied to, of course, the Guam Legislature and all that. Is that correct? Okay, I think in the Department of Education, University of Guam, and I believe the Guam Community College, just the other day we released, was it 5 or 7? 600,000, or about, was that about 5 or 6%? 5% of the reserves. And as I mentioned earlier, I will be sitting down and talking with Department of Education and the University of Guam
Okay.
on their needs.
All right. How about the Attorney General's office?
Senator, no reserves were imposed. 15% of reserves were imposed on those entities that are not under BBMR's allotment control.
Okay.
So that includes the Office of Public Auditor, Attorney General's Office, the Legislature, United Judiciary, Public Defender.
Okay. So none of those had a 0% reserve.
That's correct.
Okay. How about MIP? Did we reserve? Did you apply a 15% reserve on MIP?
Yes, we did.
Okay. We just, got a couple of emails on from some doctors, I guess, about the payments coming out of MIP. Have you discussed that with Public Health and see if how far behind are they on their payments to providers? Do you know?
No, I don't, sir. We did just make a recent release from the MIP reserves to match Medicaid, local match requirement for Medicaid.
Okay, so,
Yeah, about 80,000, it was a small amount.
okay. And Medicaid itself?
No reserve was imposed on Medicaid. Any local funds that are matched, a requirement for federal match.
Okay. John, I guess we'll get when we get the report on the current run rate and the projected run rate, can you give us just an idea of which agencies would you have to release the 15% for? Or any agency that you could impose the 15% and not release it going through the end of the fiscal year?
The agencies there.
We completed a preliminary projection of expenditures, the requirements at the end of the year and how it turns out. And with the reserves, we're looking at in TAC, we're looking at $18.7 million in deficit. If we were to release the reserves, then we should be able to cover the shortfall.
Which agencies are the ones that would?
Say that again. Say that again so I can follow it.
They're all negative.
There would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Basically, based on the reserves intact, we would have to release some of the reserves to cover most of the agencies. And to cover that projected number that we're looking at of $18.7 million, that's going to be a deficit. So we would have to release most of the reserves for most of the departments
To cover that.
for that 18 million shortfall.
Yeah. If you impose that, if you impose that, then,
And they're strictly across the board now, the shortfall.
yeah. So we would have very minimal savings from the 15% reserve, because if we didn't release it, then we won't be able to cover the obligations of the departments and agencies.
Operational-wise, Senator, right now the way it looks like, just on a preliminary figures that we got on a recent projection analysis, it will show that the big departments such as Guam Fire, Police, Public Department Administration, DYA, Mental Health, those departments will probably be required to release up their 50%. But the other departments that have been, not that these other departments haven't been holding the line, but we hope to keep intact, if not all of the 50%, at least most of it. And right now it would be kind of like premature for us to say how much of that will have to be released. But once we complete the analysis, which is almost done, we will be able to give you a complete picture of maybe how much and when.
Okay, and that's part of the information we asked. And so, when do you anticipate having that information? I know we were thinking about next week, or you mentioned.
Looking at next week Friday? Next week Friday?
Next week Friday, that's a long time.
It's Monday.
Can we do it like Wednesday? Can we reconvene this for the presentation of that?
We'll try, Senator. I'll let you know on Monday.
All right.
Give you an idea of how much we've already completed.
Okay, so we'll tentatively, we will schedule the hearing, the continuation of this hearing on Wednesday at 9 a.m. next week, and then we'll reevaluate that date on Monday as you continue to work through the requirements. Is that fine with you, Mr. Rios?
That should be fine.
Okay. Now, Any other questions?
Yes,
Speaker
I'd
Wampa?
just like to, you had indicated, of course, that there's an $18.7 million deficit. What is that attributed to? Can you give us an idea what we're looking at? Are these just vendor payments, what?
Yeah, that's the 18.7 if we did not release any of the reserves.
That would be payroll.
You're right, so I
But
know,
we
so
will
but-
be covering that.
So to cover
that-
what, though?
We will be covering that 18 million. And that 18 million, of course, is caused by the 15%
Right.
reserve. So we still have that 15% reserve. So our projection at the end of the fiscal year, this is just strictly for general fund, is looking at about 18 million. And majority of that is DOE. You know, Department of Education, like as I mentioned earlier to Senator Pangilinan, is about 26 million that we're showing will be available. And we can't control, you know, that will be used by Department of Education.
But I guess Speaker Wampa says, of the 18 million, how do they fall in the object categories? And I guess that is what you will also give us to us next week, right?
Yeah, and it's mostly personnel.
And it'll be in personnel.
Yeah.
So, okay. Mr. Reyes, we also scheduled tomorrow, we have available tomorrow for any of the departments and agencies that you may wish to have come down here. Do we need to convene tomorrow? You may plan on that on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
for next week,
Yes.
if you should require anybody else to come down?
Yes.
Okay, all right. If no additional questions, we will recess this hearing until Wednesday at 9 a.m. next week, and we'll reevaluate that date with Mr. Reyes on Monday to firm it up. So we will recess this hearing. Thank you very much. Your cooperation is certainly appreciated. Thank you, and we are now in recess.